Hi, everybody. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes to get everyone in. Feel free to put a comment in, so we know who's with us today. We'll just start in a couple of minutes and let some stragglers arrive, and then we'll kick off. Just give us a minute or two. Thanks. Cool. Just like 20 more seconds. Cool. Okay, I think we'll kick off now, and this whole session is being recorded and will be available after the event if anyone comes in late. So no big deal. So thanks very much for joining us on this from where I am in Stockport, near Manchester. Fairly grey evening. Hopefully, good environment and time situation for doing some code and getting to experience what we call intro to programming. This session, we are for the first time doing it with two of us. So I'm Jonny, as you can see. I head up the internal development team at North Coders. I used to be a tutor, but now mainly do development and still teach a few odd bits and pieces. And I am joined by Maddie as well. Hello, Maddie.
Hello. I am a tutor at North Coders, and I also do a little bit of internal development, so kind of the opposite way around to Jonny.
Cool. Yes, and I can see we've got some real people posting messages to us. Hello, it's really nice. So feel free at any point to write a comment, and we'll be able to see it. We can't see your faces, unfortunately. So if you're looking or feeling bewildered or confused or want anything going over, then just please do ask, and we've got plenty of time to make sure that you get the most out of this. So this session is not really about talking about the absolute basic building blocks of code, and there are loads of resources available for you to go and do that, and we can talk through some of those if you want signposting to them at the end of the session. What we're going to try and do in this session is demonstrate a real application. It's going to be a chat room, which is starting to feel increasingly retro as an application idea, but hopefully will make sense to everyone here. So we're going to make a little chat room, and we can see that with a little bit of understanding and really not all that much code at all, we can make like a real life application. And this is the sort of thing that we might be asking students on the North Coders Bootcamp, which I imagine most of you are aware of to some extent, to be doing roughly halfway through the course. It used to be, in fact, an exercise that we do, although we've replaced it now and co-opted it for this session. So probably for most of this demo, we're going to do something called pair programming, another thing we do on the bootcamp quite a lot. And I'm going to take the role of the navigator and talk through what we want to be coded, and Maddie's going to be driver and operate the steering wheel and get the things in the right place, and certainly challenge me or question me if she thinks I'm talking nonsense, and tell me what I should be doing, as indeed can all of you. So we're going to use a website called CodePen. CodePen, you should have received a link to the actual site that we're using. CodePen's really good because you can follow along. Probably easier to do if you've got two monitors. If you don't, then feel free to to just watch, or if you can kind of flick between us, then that's fine. But the cool thing about CodePen is that we can save it as we go, and all you will need to do is refresh your page if you get lost. If you start typing in the wrong stuff, as long as we save it every so often, you can just refresh your page and you can get the up-to-date code, and so you can kind of follow along with us and not worry about falling behind or anything like that if you would like to. But if you just want to watch and listen, then that is absolutely fine as well. And we will get a link to you just in case people ask for it. But yeah, it'll be easy for us to forward to you if you don't have access to that. Okay, cool. So would you like to share your screen, Maddie, and we'll talk through what's going on here. So if you're on this site, you might see it a little bit differently to how Maddie's got it set up here. There's a button in the top there, that's the one, yeah. And if you click that, then you'll be able to arrange the windows in a slightly different way. And for this chat room, having that arrangement on the left-hand side one there is probably the best. And as you can see, we've got like 3 windows to the left here, and I'll talk through what they're all for in just a moment. But just in case Maddie wasn't aware of this, you can easily flick between these and make them bigger if you double click on the tab at the top of them. So if we double click on where it says HTML, then that will expand to that, and that's kind of a neat way of ducking round. So please feel free to write in the comments if you know what any of these stand for. I'll go through them in just a sec. But what we've got here, HTML, CSS, and JS, these are like the 3 main building blocks of pretty much everything on the internet. You can write with these, knowing these 3 technologies, and kind of getting a good sense of what they all do is really important. And once you have got a good sense, you can make some really interesting, powerful stuff. Anything that you've used on the internet is going to have some element of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in it. So that's what we're going to work with today. So HTML is where we're going to start. HTML is hypertext markup language, which is a fancy name for basically how your page is laid out. So what kind of things are there on your page? Are there bits of text? Are there headings? Are there lists? Are there images? Are there links? All of these things are kind of written out in HTML. You describe what's going on in there. So we're going to add lots of elements to our HTML. We're going to have plenty of bits and pieces to do that. That we'd include in a chat room. You can have a little think about what elements make up a chat room, and chances are you're going to see them made today. So that's the HTML. Then the CSS, that stands for cascading style sheets, and this is all about what the site looks like. So how the colors, the spacing, and the layout, the fonts we use, the borders, anything like that, anything kind of presentational is the domain of CSS. Then we've got finally the JS or the JavaScript, and that's anything to like do with the behavior of the website. So this is where the fun stuff comes in. Anything we want to make this website do in terms of like being interactive or anything like that, we can manage with JavaScript. And this is kind of like the main language. You can do all sorts of things with JavaScript that aren't just make websites. And we do plenty of those things on the course as well. But JavaScript is the language of the web, and we can connect to all sorts of things there. And as Maddie's been flicking through, you've seen that there's a few things already written on all of these tabs. Some of them are bits of code that we've just kind of put in. Anything that's kind of colorful, bits of code that we put in advance, because we don't need to worry about doing that today, just to help us get set up and running. So in the top of the JavaScript, the HTML file there, you can see we've got some links, and that's actually just fetching some fonts that we're going to use a bit later. And in the JavaScript one, we're connecting to a database, and I'll talk more about what on earth that means a little bit later on. But all of the grey stuff, they're what we call comments, and comments aren't interpreted by the computer at all. They're just there for us humans to understand what's going on. So they serve a really useful purpose today, because it's going to remind us of everything that we need to do. And full disclosure, I've got a finished version up on my other monitor. So if you see me like glancing upwards, it's because I'm essentially looking at what the answer is and making sure that I'm doing everything in the right order. Maddie doesn't actually have that luxury, I don't think. So I will. I'll try to make sure everything's communicated well. Yeah, the comments they're just there for us, and it's important to remember that as developers, there's so much information that you could possibly learn, could possibly be doing at any one time, and you really aren't expected, and you really don't need to remember it all. That's what the internet is there for. After all, we can look up so much stuff on the internet and use it to help support us in our development. So you should not be, and I will probably say this at least 3 more times through this session, you should not be trying to feel like you need to remember everything that you're seeing today. It's not about that. What would be really good is if you kind of understand the point of what we're doing and how bits of what we're doing relate to what you're going to see on the screen as well. And if you can see those links start to draw kind of the purpose of what's going on, then that's really good. And if you're enjoying it, all the better, and you know that this is the kind of thing that you might like to pursue and do for a job. So cool. I just had a message from James that we had some spam messages come in, so apologies for the content of any of the messages that you might see there, but they've been banned, so we won't see anything like that again. All right, cool. So let's kick off. Are your fingers ready to roll, Maddie?
Yeah, ready to go.
Okay, super. So we're going to start with the HTML, and we're going to try and get some stuff on the screen so we can see a little bit of the skeleton of our website. So we've got here what's called a tag, a body tag, and everything we're going to write is going to go inside that body tag. We have to do that in order for it to appear on the screen. So the first thing we're going to do, as is neatly demonstrated by that comment there, is add a title. So Maddie's going to stick in a tag specifically for titles. We can use an H1 tag, which is great, which means like the first level of heading. And then you can call this what you like, Maddie. I usually go with NC chat, but Messenger is also, that's fine. Super. And then Maddie's closing the tag there, and so now we know that everything inside that is a heading. We use kind of like family terms a lot in HTML, so we can say that the H1 is now a child of the body, which is a weird phrase to say out of any other context. Cool. Okay, so that's our heading, and we can already see that's made something appear on the screen, which is nice. Looks a little bit internet in 1995, but still a good start. Cool. And so the next thing we're going to do, as it says somewhere, for our messages to appear, so we're going to write a div tag for that, amusingly named div tag. And a div is like a division or a section of your website that you want to kind of separate out because you want to think of this chunk of the website as something separate to other chunks. And what the div is kind of like a generic term. We might have lots of divs at some point on our website, so we're going to actually give this div something unique about it. We're going to give it an ID. So and it's going to add like an ID attribute to this, and that's going to tell us and other parts of our application what this div is for. So if we go with the name message list container here, and that's feels like a long name, but it's going to be really descriptive as to what we're doing. And then we're going to add something else as a child to this div. So you could say this was a grandchild of the body tag if you liked. We're going to go for like a UL tag, and a UL tag shows that we've got a list, an unordered list. And that can also have an ID, so we can refer to it in our other bits of our code, and that's going to be our message list. Okay, brill. Now, nothing's appeared on the screen, as you might have seen there, because we don't have any messages yet, and there's nothing really to do that. And we're not going to write our messages in our website. We're going to go and fetch them from somewhere else a little bit later on. So we will see how that goes. We've got one more section that we need to that we are going to definitely need for this website, and that's going to be where the user adds their information in. So if a user wants to write a message, they need a place to write that in, and we do that in something called a form in HTML. So here's a lovely form tag, and we can give that an ID as well if we call that our message input form. Okay, nice one. And that's going to need a couple of things inside that form. We're going to need somewhere to write the information, some sort of label to say what they should be writing, and a button that they can press in order to send that message. So if we go with the label first, yeah, whatever you like really is the label for this information. I've got what would you like to say, but anything that's going to be helpful. And then if we stick an input tag inside this label as well, then that means it's going to be clear to our computer what we're labeling. And our input tag's a little bit different. We don't actually add any text inside the input tag, because that's the user's job, right? So it's what's called self-closing, and you can see that it's a slightly different syntax or a slightly different set of characters there. Instead of label being written twice, the input tag kind of closes itself. But we are going to write an ID because we're going to later need to know what someone wrote in there. So inside that input tag, we can add an ID, and we'll call that message input. And some stuff's coming up on the screen. We've got something that looks like a label, something that looks like an input box, which is great. So finally, inside the form and after the label, we can put in another div, and that's going to create a little section for our button. So we can put a button inside there as well, which has got its own tag. Super. What do you think, Maddie? What should we write on this button?
Send a message.
Some message. Yes, always be clear to your users what they're doing, which is cool. Okay, so far so basic, but starting to look a little bit like a chat room. We've not really got a sense of where these messages are going to appear yet. So we're going to move on from the HTML and go over to the CSS. It might be worth saving at this point, Maddie. So
Yeah.
if anyone's got a little bit lost or their code's not doing what they like or just not being able to follow, then you can refresh your page and you should be able to get to the same thing that we've got here. Okay, bro. So as it says here, the styles are going to get going here, or the presentational aspects of the website. So we probably won't do all of these right now. We'll just do the ones that we need, and then we'll see if we've got time at the end to dress it up a bit more. So we're going to do a little bit to the whole page, just to get it all a little bit more nicely laid out. So we're going to target the whole body tag here, and that word body, that is relating to the body element with the pointy peats, we sometimes call it North Coders, or the angle brackets. So anything we put in here is going to affect the stuff that's inside that body, which is everything. So this is going to be useful. So if we go with a background, we're going to change the background attribute of this body, and the value of that we could set to my favorite color, which is white smoke. which I may not even come across that well over the stream, but you can see it's a little bit grayer than the white. And if ever I just want a not too harsh white color, I go with white smoke to start off with. And the other thing I think we should do is pull everything away from the edge of the screen so much so it's a little bit more centralized. And so we can add a margin here, and that's going to stop things going too close to the edge. What do you reckon, Maddie?
Oh, I'm not too sure. I usually trial and error it with the numbers.
Yeah, trial and error. All of this is going to be trial and error. Should we go for 25px? And if anyone knows what px means, then feel free to write it in the comments, and we'll come back to it in a second, see if you were right. So that's great. That'll do for the body for now. We're also going to use a font. So we loaded in a font in our HTML earlier from Google, but we need to apply it in our CSS. So we want to do that to the body, but we'll actually, in fact, let's add it to the tag that we've already got first, and you'll see why we're going to do it this way. So if we have a font family attribute, and the value of that can be pangolin, which you need to write in quote marks here. Cool. Okay, so that has updated the font for the heading and for the label, but I don't think it has for the button, and it won't have done for the input as well. So these elements aren't inheriting; they aren't getting that information. That's just how the web works. So we need to make sure we target those things with this pangolin font as well. So if we have a new tag with that targets body, button, and input, and stick that font family in there instead, then yeah, now we can see that button's using that font as well. And if we write in here, we get it as well, which is nice. Okay, cool. Right, let's create a place for these messages to appear now. So earlier we created a div and we gave it an ID, and we don't want to create this box for all of our divs, just this one. So instead of putting in div here, we're going to use that ID instead, which Maddie can do with a hash character, and that says, "Go and please find this ID'd element rather than this named element." Cool. And yeah, message list container, I think it was. And cool, can open that up, and we're going to basically create a square here, I guess, or a rectangle. So let's go for a width of 500 pixels and a height of 400. Oh, there you are. It's pixels. I gave it away. If you were frantically Googling that, that's what PX stands for. And there we go. So now there's the space. Let's stick a border box around it as well. So we'll have a border attribute, and that's going to be 5. We'll go for a nice thick 5 pixel one, and we'll have a solid line, and we can give it a color. It's gone for black by default, but let's use the North Coders red brand color, which we can write in a very weird way. It's called a hex code, and if Maddie doesn't know it by heart, then that's disappointing. I also don't know it by heart. I have it written down here for my for exactly this occasion. So it's EB152F. Cool, and we've got a nice bright North Cozy red, which hopefully is the same as the background on our website stuff. So that code means essentially the EB refers to the amount of red that's in there, and EB doesn't sound like an amount, but this is written in what's called hexadecimal. So instead of using just the numbers from 0 to 9 in order to demonstrate a value, computers like numbers that are multiples of 2 or doubles of 2. So 16 is a useful number, and we don't have 16 digits to refer to, so we can use some of the letters as well. So EB is some number between 0 and 255, which is if we wrote it out in normal decimal way, and quite close to the big of that, which the bigger end of 255, which is why there's so much red in there. But there's also a little bit of green and a little bit of blue as well. So the 15 is the green and the 2F is the blue, and that all gets mixed together to make that color you see. Cool. We're going to add one other property to this container as well, because we want all of the messages to stay inside that box, and if there were too many messages, then if there were too many messages, we don't want them to like spill out of the box. We want to be able to scroll through them like you would on a chat room. So if we add an overflow scroll property, that will make sure that happens. James is telling me that I've got the code wrong, and I always think I've updated it when I got it wrong the first time, but clearly I keep forgetting. He says it's EB1C24. I'm going to update that on my notes. That mistake. Okay. Could you tell the difference?
No, but I'm not a designer, so I don't have the eye for that.
No, marginal at least. But yeah, I'm sure some people can. Okay, cool. So there's a box. I think let's do a little bit more. Let's sort out the form stuff at the bottom, which is looking a little bit crowded. So let's create a bit of space between all the form stuff and the box. So if we target the form tag, and we can give it a margin top attribute, so that's not going to create space around on all sides, just the top side, and that's going to be 10 pixels. And then the input, and we're going to create a bit of space around between the border of the input and the place where people are writing, so it's not too crowded against the side. So we can use another one we've not seen yet for that, called padding, and we can go for 10 pixels there as well. And let's give a little bit more space for people to write their messages in, because that's a bit tight. We'll set a width for this input. 300 pixels got here. Cool, that takes us quite neatly to the end of the box. And now if Maddie types something in there, it's a bit of space around it, a bit nicer to type in. Cool, and finally, I think we can improve this button a little bit. So let's set the background of the button. You can just target the button tag. Set the background of the button to the same North code as red that we've corrected up there. Nice. And then we can't really see the writing now, so we'll set the writing, which we do with the color property, Americanized spelling, I'm afraid, and that could be white smoke, and let's add a bit of padding, 5 pixels of padding around there, so it's got space to breathe. Nice. And finally, we'll change the default border because it's a bit ugly, and we'll go for a more simple 2 pixel solid black. Okay, what do you think, Maddie?
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, I'm not sure I'd go that far, but it looks okay. It will do for now. I think it's usable for sure. Nice one. Okay, so we're going to move on to the fun bit now, the JavaScript. We're not fetching any messages, and we're not able to really write any messages or do anything with them. So this is where the kind of real behavior, the real kind of functionality of the website is going to get established. So if you wouldn't mind just scrolling up a little bit, Maddie, and I'll just go through a little bit more what's going on here. We're using a database called Firestore, which is part of Firebase that you can see written there. It's made by Google, and it's you can think of a database as a computer that someone else owns, in this case Google, which they let you, generally for a bit of money, rent out some space in order to store some information. And by putting that information on another person's computer and putting it in a way that's you're then putting it in a place that's accessible to the whole internet, and anyone can come and request this information if you permit them to. So there's lots of different types of databases that do different things, but Firestore is really cool because it does something called real-time database. So that means if the database updates, we don't need to go and like refresh our page to go and get that latest information. The database will come to our website and tell us that there is an update. And it's the same kind of mechanism that you might see if you're like watching a sports match news feed or something like that, where you're getting live updates appearing on the screen without having to refresh the page. So there we've got some config to allow our website to connect to the database, and then we make a what's called a client, something that we'll be able to interact with in code in order to do stuff to this database, which is kind of two things. One of the things is to go and fetch the messages, and more than that, listen to the messages so we know when they update. And we've already written that code here. We'll also use this database connection client to add messages to the database a little bit later on as well. So kind of stuck out there in the middle on line 13, it says add message to list message, and that's a function, a bit of code that does something. We want it to do it over and over again every time a message arrives. That we haven't written that yet. We don't know what add message to list does. We haven't defined that behavior yet, and that'll be part of what we need to do. But that will be the last part of the step of getting the messages to appear on the screen. All of the rest of the stuff that needs to happen in that respect is up there. Okay, cool. So we're going to start off by writing a few bits of code that are going to go and fetch the elements from our website. They're going to fetch the tags, the divs and the forms and the inputs and all of those things, because we're going to need to know some stuff about them, or we're going to want to do stuff with them in our JavaScript. So if we get them all sorted now and fetch them, then we will be able to use them to do interesting things in a minute. So this will be a bit repetitive, but we'll get through it. So first off, let's create something to define our message list. So what Maddie's writing here is const, which is like constant. It's going to be something that is never going to change. As soon as we define this, it's not going to change in our program. So we can do this with a bit of code called document.getElementById. And that's kind of a nice description of what we're doing. We gave those IDs earlier, so this is going to make us fetch that element so we can do stuff with it a bit later on. And this was message-list, this one. Cool. Then we're going to do pretty much exactly the same thing for the form that we wrote, because we are going to want to control the behavior of what happens when we submit the new message.
Any particular variable name?
Let's go with message input form, because that is pretty much the same thing that we gave as the ID. So I'm not going to go through every little bit of syntax here. If anyone's got any questions, please do feel free. You're being unusually quiet on the chat, so please don't be shy. We'd love to get questions and field them as we're going. But yeah, we've got message input form here. The yeah, that'll do. Cool. And then we're going to do the message input itself. So yeah, so the input form we're going to use to make sure that we submit the message in the right way, but we also need the message input so we can get the contents of the form.
Should I put that here?
Yeah, wherever works, somewhere around here. Okay, Brill. That is all of the things that we need to fetch. So we're going to now start making it do some stuff. So I think what we'll do is get it so we can add a message and submit that message first off. So we're going to write a function, and I think we should call this function submit message.
Cool. Have I messed the order of these comments up with where I've declared things?
I think if you move that message input underneath that comment, then the comment underneath will link to everything that's written.
Underneath this one?
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. Okay. Oh, thank you, Ferrari. Yeah, we've got an extra D on line 26. That's good spot. Yes, I did not, and that's kind of my responsibility as a programmer to spot that. Coolio. All right, so let's go with cool. So make sure our form is listening for when we click the button. So we're going to get our form to listen. So if we write message input form, and we're going to use some behavior that exists on forms called add event listener. So we want this form to do something when some kind of event happens. And in our case, that event is the submit event. And forms have this submit event. You've triggered so many submit events in your lifetime that you may not even have realized. Every time you buy something online or fill in a form or do your tax return or whatever, you are submitting a form. So the submit event is what we're going to listen to, and then we need to say, well, what are we actually going to do when we do this? So if we just write submit message here, and we'll define the function outside of here. Cool. So what we're saying we're going to do is submit a message, but we don't really know what submit message. That doesn't mean anything at the moment. We're going to write that functionality now. So let's define our own function called submit message. Yeah, let's go with it. If we go with like a function declaration, like the function keyword, it's maybe a little bit easier to see what we're doing this time. Cool. Okay. So this submit message is going to it's going to get some information from our event. It's going to, in fact, anything that happens to do with that event is going to get passed into this function. So this function can use it if it needs to do some stuff. So that's why Maddie's writing the word event there and what's called the parameters of this function. And that event might be slightly different depending on what's going on. So when you click something, that's a kind of event, and that event information might tell you what time you clicked, where on the page you clicked, was it a double click or was it a regular click, all sorts of bits and pieces. And we are going to use this event to do something a bit weird that happens a lot in modern websites nowadays, because if you actually click on send message for a second, Maddie, we're going to see it do some odd behavior. So it says not found there, which is weird because we didn't really know that we were looking for anything. So what that means is this is a very standard behavior of the internet that's been there for ages. Normally, when you click a form, you're saying go to some other part of the internet and go and send some information and then give me some stuff back. And we're not actually using the internet in that way this time. We're going to get rid of this behavior, and we're going to customize how that information gets sent into the internet with the Firebase client that we made earlier. So if you just type something into submit message, in fact, if you type event dot, you don't need to refresh because it will refresh in a second when we start changing the code, I think. So if we do event dot prevent default, that's going to stop that weird thing happening. If you click submit message now, Maddie, it should just not do anything. So it's got rid of that that behavior there. Oh, congratulations, Ferrari, on your graduation. I'm glad you spotted that capital D then. I would be disappointed if you hadn't. Cool. Okay. So nice. Okay, so we've got to do a couple of things in here. We've got to go and get the message that was typed in, and then we're going to send it up to the database. So first line of code after this, we're going to define some message text.
Do you want this to be a const?
Yeah, let's go with const. Pretty much everything we're defining isn't going to change like as the code runs, so we can const everything, I think. And that's going to be the message input that we found earlier. And we're going to do dot value from that. It's going to tell us what someone wrote inside that input box at that moment where it was submitted. And then underneath that, we're going to define a message timestamp, because we need a way of making sure these messages are stored in the right order. So when we get them back, they come back in the right order, not all jumbled up. So we can do this with something called the date object in JavaScript. So if you do new date, and that's going to give us some information. So if you invoke that, and then do dot get time, and get time is actually going to retrieve for us, a bit weirdly, the amount of seconds that have passed since the 1st of January in 1970, or maybe 1971, I forget, which is what some programmer at some point decided would be a useful time to track from. And that's kind of what we're stuck with now. So that's our timestamp. Cool. And then we're going to send this up to our database. So underneath here, if you do db.collection, and call that with a string of messages. And like I said before, please don't worry about trying to memorize this or understand every single thing. All you really need to know about this bit is that we are making sure that this information goes into our database, into our server on the internet, in the right way. And on there, we're going to call .add. And we're going to invoke that with the information we need about our message. So that's going to be what we call an object in JavaScript, a way of bringing together like bits of information into one thing. And that's going to have two properties. So the first property is going to be text, and the value of that text is going to be the message text that we just defined a couple of lines ago. And then we're going to have a timestamp property, which needs to be all lowercase, just for how it's used earlier. And that's going to be value. That's going to be the message timestamp. Okay, awesome. Right, I think that will do for now. So if you want to type something in the input box, some lovely greeting, Maddie, and press send message. Okay, cool. So we don't really know what's happened there. We don't know it's definitely worked. I'd say there's one bit of behavior that we'd expect from a form, which is that when you press enter or when you click that button, it disappears and you're ready to then write the next one. So let's add that in as well. Inside our submit message function, we'll go, if we set the message input value to be an empty string, that will clear it out. Message input dot value. Cool. Okay, let's try sending another message and see if that works. Okay, brill. So a little bit later, when we, not very long at all, we will see if those messages made it to the database when we start actually showing them on the screen. So that's going to be our last comment on this page, and this is the last bit. So if you've managed to bear with us and get this far, we're nearly there. Well done. If you followed along, even bigger well done. So this is going to be probably our chunkiest function so far, and we're going to call it add message to list. And you may remember that that's something that we referred to right at the top of this file. If you scroll up a minute, Maddie, you can see there stuck in the yellow. This is us now writing what that actually does, and then we'll have joined all of the bits of the puzzle together, which is very exciting. And if I didn't make it clear earlier, you will all be able to type stuff into this form as well, because we're all connecting to the same. If you're doing this on CodePen with us, we're all connecting to the same database, the same server, probably somewhere in Western Europe. No idea where Google sticks it. We don't need to know, but we'll all be connecting to the same one. So if you want to write questions on there, you'll now have two options for us for the end. Okay, so let's write this function, and then we can field any questions you've got. So first thing to do is we're going to create an element for our message to go into called a list item, and that's going to go inside our UL or our ordered list that we made earlier. So let's define a message list item. And we can go, so we do that with document.createElement. We're going to call that with li for list item. Brilliant, cool. And we are going to put some information in there. So in the parameters, remember those curly brackets that Maddie used earlier for the event? This time this is being called with the message. So this function will do something slightly different for every different message that we get through, but essentially they're roughly the same thing. So on that message, we've got two things. We've got a text and we've got a timestamp, and it's the text that we'll worry about for now. So if we do message list item dot inner text, and we'll set that to be the message dot text. Cool. Okay, we're getting there, but at the moment this list item is just kind of floating around there on the website. It's not anchored to anything. It needs to be part of the inside that body tag at some place in order for it to be viewed. Kind of like a family tree, needs to be somehow linked into a relationship there. So in our case, we want to stick it inside the message list that we fetched earlier. So if we do message list dot append child, And we're going to call that with the message list item. So trying to be really good at naming things that help make sense. We know what we're trying to do with things. Makes it quite wordy, but hopefully a lot more readable. Cool. Okay. So what are we missing? We've got the tag, we've got some text inside it, and then we're sticking it to the message list. Cool. And I think actually earlier did you call it list rather than message list?
Maybe, yeah. Let's check. Yeah, I did.
I reckon message list is a better name actually. So maybe we could.
I'll change that variable.
Change that variable. Cool. Okay, so this feels like it should be working. We're not seeing any error messages or anything, are we? So let's just refresh the page and I'll see if I can see what's going on. Okay, so let's look at the JavaScript. What we're doing now is basically what every developer spends 90% of their time doing, which is trying to figure out why their code isn't working. So we've got let's go to the top. Cool. Okay, so looking for changes, and we're getting the message out from the data, and we're passing that to our message list. That looks okay. Let's scroll down a little bit. I see something. So if you scroll up a little bit more. So on line 9, having to peer a bit here. Do you notice it says like .order by message time?
Yes.
So when I wrote this, I thought that would be a a sensible name for the property, for how we should order them. But we used timestamp earlier. So my guess is that our website doesn't know what to do with this because it doesn't know whether it's trying to sort things by message time, but it's not any use. So let's make sure they're both the same. Doesn't matter too much which one. Cool. How's that looking? All right, there we go. So that was it. We managed to find our bug. And when you're doing development, you know, in a proper platform, there are lots of tools you can use. We do something called testing, which is vital for ensuring you know your code works, because it's really hard to see that. So, but we know that that's kind of working now because we've got the 3 hello everyone's that Maddie put in earlier. And and she's just saved as well. So if you want to refresh, if you've not followed along, you should be able to type in something there. I don't know how many people are listening or if we're going to get any messages at all. But if anyone's out there and you want to type something in and let us know that you're out there, then feel absolutely free. But of course, no pressure. Okay, cool. There you go. There's our first custom message from someone. We've obviously not got like any signing in or anything like that, so we don't know who's sending these messages. There would be lots of ways to do that if you were to do this kind of more properly. But this will do for now. So Brill, thank you so much to folks for following along. We've got 5-6 minutes before we have to wrap up. We'd be very happy to answer any questions that could be about what you've just seen, about learning to code, anything like that, about anything to do with tech, about anything that North Code has done. So feel free to ask. You can ask in that chat room we just made, or leave a comment. If nothing comes along in 30 seconds or so, then we can add a little bit more to this site. But normally some questions come in, we have some good ones. No, much appreciated to you. Oh, cool. Interesting question. So where does JS sit in relation to HTML? I guess the way you should think of it is like when you put files on your computer, whether they're like Microsoft Word files or game save files or anything like that. Whenever anything lives on your computer, all of those files that belong to something sit in a folder. And really, even though it looks a bit fancier than that on CodePen, that's what's happening. There's some files somewhere on CodePen servers, their database, where some of those files are JavaScript files, and some of them are HTML files. And in the CodePen, there'll be a little bit more actually in the HTML file. There'll actually be an extra tag called a script tag, and that script tag will make a reference to the JavaScript file, which says, okay, cool, you fetched me the HTML, the layout. My computer now needs to go and fetch some other stuff as well. And that's how it gets the CSS as well. Cool, interesting question. Thank you. Would you recommend it as a job? Would you recommend it, Maddie?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun. Anybody who really likes problem solving, or anybody who has a flair for creativity, both sides of that, the logical and the creative, you get to do that with this job. So it's absolutely so much fun.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing about it as well. I get to kind of be logical when I want to be, but be expressive and creative when I want to be. I really enjoy both those aspects of it. And I used to be a teacher before this, and I would certainly recommend it compared to that. I feel in much more control of my life and what I'm doing now than I did as a teacher or any of the other jobs I've done, really. Yeah. Sorry, Maddie.
No, I just used to do admin work before this, and I have a philosophy degree. So people do come to coding from all sorts of different backgrounds.
Yeah, we have so many. If you look at our website and like our testimonials on there, loads of different people's stories, and I think you're very likely to find someone who like resonates with your own experience. Cool. Thank you for that question. Any more for any more? I think one thing that people are often keen to know about is what are good kind of learn to code places to go to. I guess quite a few of you might already have gone into this, and we do direct people to some resources when they apply to North Coders to kind of make sure that they are keen on it and they enjoy it and they really want to do it and commit to a course and essentially changing their career or setting out on that as a career. Probably the best first place to go to is a website called Free Code Camp, which you could get up if you want, Maddie, briefly. And Free Code Camp is it's good marketing in how they've named it because it is free, and so you can learn a huge amount from Free Code Camp. It can really good place to get started. And yeah, we've got here, like you see these massive kind of certifications that they do. We ask people to do a little bit of this before they start the course at the moment, to kind of check it's right for them and that they enjoy it. Some stuff on JavaScript there, which is what we've obviously just been doing, and if you do a few of these lessons, you'll already start to piece together some of the stuff that we did. But there's also other ones more based on web design and also on data, which is another thing that a very transferable skill from web design. But if you've got kind of like a more of a maths data analysis angle you want to take, then data analytics is a common thing that people go into as well. So yeah, I recommend Free Code Camp. There's other ones called there's Code Academy, there's Team Treehouse, all sorts of different sites for learning to code, and different kind of pricing strategies, lots of kind of free tiers and free trials that you can use to try and get through some stuff. Cool. Okay, well, we have hit 7 o'clock, so I reckon we'll call it a day there. Thank you so much, everyone, for spending an hour with us this evening, sorry. And yeah, if you've got any questions, you can reach out to us on our North Dakota Slack and just give us a call to get connected to that. It's a great kind of place to meet lots of other people who are trying stuff out. Or you can find me on LinkedIn or just email North Coders, any way you want, and we're happy to kind of talk to you about anything. Cool, bro. Yeah. Richard just said didn't have a chance to code along, can do it later. You think you said, yeah. So we should send out a link to the recorded version of this website, and this site will be up and operational, so you can use it as much as you like, try and follow along and restart it or whatever you would like to do. I won't leave the connection to the database available forever, because that's not a very safe thing to do in programming, but for a couple of weeks at least, it will be available. And if you need it again, then just give us a shout. All right. Well, bye from me.
And bye from me as well.
I think we can do this TV presenter pair thing. Very convincing. All right. Cheers, Maddie. I'll see everyone later. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.
Bye.